Hi all, and welcome back to this tutorial series on unit testing with C# and XUnit. As promised in the last video, we're going to start actually writing some code and some tests. But first, what actually is unit testing and why do we do it? We covered this a little bit in the first video, but let's go into a little bit more detail. And let's say that the idea of unit testing is to have very, very small, very specific tests that run as regularly as you want and let you know pretty much immediately if something has failed. And this sounds fantastic, but when we say unit testing, what is an actual unit? And annoyingly, this is one of those things that is open to interpretation. If you Google what a unit is in unit testing, you'll get lots of different responses. So everybody has a kind of different idea of what a unit test is, which doesn't help for clarity. The simplest explanation for it, and the one that I conform to the most, is that a unit test is very low level and takes the smallest testable functionality and isolates it from the rest of the code. So you're only testing one thing per test, and that's something quite specific. And now that the basic theory is out of the way, and very basic theory I admit, let's give a more practical example. And for this set of videos, we're actually going to iterate on the code base slowly as we build up simple functionalities. And the functionality is going to build up is going to be on one class that handles a bank account. The class will provide most basic functions of a bank account whilst providing a solid foundation on unit testing. Now, I admit that this is a very simplistic example and the code that you'll be seeing won't be what you see in, let's say, a real life situation, but it will give you a solid idea of what a unit test is and how it works and how you test certain aspects of your code. So I've talked enough. So let's actually start writing some code. So we'll start with creating an account class. In fact, let's start by deleting our unit test 1 and our class 1 because they're not needed. And under the production code, we'll create a new class and we'll call it account. Now, what kind of functionalities do we actually need for a bank account? And for me, what does a user expect? And as a user, for me using a bank account, I want to be able to withdraw my money. It's a very simple request. So let's start by writing a function for that. And we'll make it public. And we'll have it return nothing for now, so public void, and we'll call it withdraw. Withdraw will probably take a decimal, and we'll call a variable amount. And then once we've got that, we need to subtract it from our balance. So we should probably have a balance here. And we'll make a property of that. So a property that's on the class. Can't spell. Decimal balance, sorry. A decimal balance, and we'll give this a public getter and public setter just to make it easier. What we can say is balance equal minus, as opposed to equal minus equals. That's it, let's make it easier. Balance minus amount. It's the easiest thing to do. So now we've got our account class, let's write a very simple test for it. So we'll go to our unit tests and we'll create a class called account tests. And again, the naming should be as simple as possible. Don't try and overcomplicate things like this. And here we need to write our first function to do our first test. Now, a test itself isn't anything special. It's just another function, but a function that will assert certain types of functionalities. And to be able to specify that this function is a unit test, we need to give it an attribute, which is fact. And what this allows is the XUnit runner to be able to find what it needs to run. So anything with an attribute of fact, it will say, hey, I know this is a unit test, I need to be able to run this. And now we've got the fact attribute, we need to do treat it as a normal function. We say public void. And this is the most difficult part in all programming, and this is what do we name our test. And again, this is a difficult one because it's not a standard naming convention for tests in C#. It's normally what works for you. But again, there are some good practices to follow. And these are some simple steps. Remember that you're not testing a function, you're testing a functionality. You shouldn't really include the method that you're testing in the name of the test unless it makes sense to do so. Always use long and descriptive names. Long and descriptive names are a lot easier to understand than shorter names, and it'll give a clear indication of what you're testing. You should understand what functionality you're testing based solely on the name of the test. And then you should always remember the scenario you're testing, the conditions you're testing, and the expectation of what you're testing. So taking that into account, we're going to name our test. And again, this is a long one, but given user attempt withdrawal, when attempt is successful, should deduct amount from balance. And you'll notice that the scenario, condition, and expectation are separated here. So it gives a clear readability on what this test does without having to actually read the implementation. So if this test was to break, a user, another programmer who's never seen this code before, can easily see what's gone wrong. You can see that a user's attempted withdrawal, the attempt was successful, and the amount should be deducted from the balance. So now that we've got that, we can actually start writing our test. So what we will say is we will give it a var account, and this is equal to our new account. So this is our new bank account. And then we can say account dot withdraw, and we will put in amount of withdrawal. So let's withdraw 10. So now if we were to call this and run it, we can right click to do run unit test here. It should run this test at the bottom. You can see it building here and compiling. And you see it's successful. Now, it says successful, but we haven't actually tested anything yet. All we've tested is that we can call account.withdraw, but we don't know if the balance is actually deducted. So what we can do here is we can make use of our public property, and we can do an assert, and we'll do .equal. So we know here that our account balance is 0 because we haven't specified it anywhere else. We know that we've deducted €10 or £10 or $10. So we know we should be left with negative 10. So then we can say, okay, we expect negative 10. And what is the actual amount? And the amount we're expecting is account.balance. Now, it's important that we do it in this order. So when we do an assert equal, we say what we're expecting first, and then what the account balance is, or what the actual result is afterwards. So from here, we should be able to run this test again, and all going well, this should still pass. Oh, it's filled. That's interesting. So it's expected -10, but it's actually got 10. Did I do? Oh, I forgot. You can see here I've made a mistake in saying balance is equal to balance equal to the amount. So this should actually be minus the amount. And we can rerun this. And hopefully this time, and there we go, this time we've got success. But that should give you a good idea, a good introduction to what a unit test is. You can see that we've only tested one thing, and you can see how quickly as well that I made a mistake, and the unit test caught it immediately. It said, hey, this is wrong. And that's an immensely powerful thing, especially when you get into larger and larger code bases. But for now, that's going to be the end of this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.